Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to call this meeting to order, this work session, I apologize, to order, and welcome to you all for your early morning presence. This is the second of the work sessions related to the septic to sewer proposal. And as I have mentioned to the City Council, we will follow the same order as we did with the previous work session. So if you'll just give me a second while I find my information. I would ask for a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Which is discussion of the proposed Sky Valley Sewer project. As with the last session, and if you don't mind, I will remind you of the protocol that we had. As I said in the previous session, we have about 90 minutes for this work session. We will not allow it to erupt into a free-for-all, and I understand that feelings are strong on both sides of this issue. The mayor and each council member will have up to 5 minutes for introductory comments regarding the septic to sewer project, and this will be timed. We will schedule up to 30 minutes for public comments. Depending on the number of sign-ups, speakers will be allowed 3 or 5 minutes per individual, strictly timed. And please, if you intend to speak, raise your hand if you're on Zoom and let our city clerk, Karen Fleming, know if you are in the room. There will be no questions, debate, or discussion between speakers and the council during the work session. Council comments will be directed to the mayor as presiding officer, and discussion will remain on the topic as noticed. This is a council work session, and it is not a public debate, and it is not a public hearing. We invite public comment, but this is not a public hearing, and it has not been noticed as such. The public's opportunity is during the public comment, for input is during the public comment period. And a reminder, if you recall my campaign comments, I voiced serious doubts about whether we need the sewer system, and I still do doubt that. Nothing has changed that view. I have maintained we deserve a needs assessment over and above the economic feasibility study. So this is my perspective, and this work session is not about my perspective, it's about the perspective of the City Council. I just want you to be aware that nothing has been changed in from my viewpoint. We want to proceed with careful and thoughtful deliberation, and as presiding officer, I hope to facilitate that. So through this and any ensuing work sessions that are necessary, I have committed to have as many work sessions, public hearings, and input sessions of any type that the City Council desires. That being said, I would ask this time that we start with Councillor Beth Pence, who is on Zoom. Do you hear us, Councillor?
I did. Do you hear me?
Thank you. And we would like to start with you and welcome your comments.
Okay, thank you. I just have a few comments. The residents of Sky Valley would not want the council and this mayor to make a decision based on old data. So with the looming May 2026 deadline for starting the sewer project or asking for an extension from GEFA, we are moving forward, and 2 months into this mayor and the 3 new council members' terms, and we find ourselves and the entire council up against that May deadline. So the 4.5-year-old GEFA grant must have accurate data from us. So we're seeking the public's help and experts' help and giving us definitive data. And that GIFA grant was applied for in August of 2021, and the ARC grant was applied for in August of 25. And we thank you for being here, guests and the public. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Allred?
Oh, Mayor, I don't really have any comments. We have been studying this issue for probably 20 years here in Sky Valley. And the problem has always been in the past that we couldn't find the money to do anything about it. So we just continue to sit and wait for something terrible to happen and without good solutions at that point. So I would hope that we would give careful consideration to the long-term implications of our decision too.
Thank you. Let's go on to Councillor Jesse Price.
I don't have anything prepared this morning to say. I agree with that. I want to get new data, updated data. I think a needs assessment is really important, just so we can make informed decisions. Data changes, the environment's changing, things are kind of always shifting around. So we just want to make the best informed decision we possibly can with the most up-to-date data.
Good morning, everybody. Did we get a second and vote to adopt the agenda? I just want to make sure we followed.
Oh,
everything.
thank you.
Sorry, I just want.
Yeah, we will amend that, and I apologize for that, everybody. You'd think that coming back from GMA training, I'd know that. Do we have a second for the agenda?
Sure. So
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the agenda is adopted, and thank you so much,
Just wanna make
Councillor
sure.
Beasley.
That was it. I just want to make sure we were on it.
All right, so now it's your turn, Councillor Beasley. Thank you.
I think I'll not say anything today.
All right. And moving on to Councillor Jim Curtis.
First of all, thank you all for being here today. I think the most pressing issue before us right now is to define what we collectively want to see in a needs assessment. What could be more rational? And yet an engineer doesn't know what a needs assessment is. What are our specific needs in Sky Valley? What questions do we each feel we need to understand in order to make a responsible decision? So I would encourage each of my fellow counselors to begin forming the questions that you personally feel need to be answered in this particular need study. These needs have to be included in a scope of work to tell the engineers what are the questions that we need them to answer. They need to be incorporated in the scope of work so we can advertise for the engineering firms to submit proposals to perform the assessment. Now, I call this a pressing issue because it takes time to issue our request for proposals. It takes time for the firms to decide to respond and to prepare their proposals to do the work, including a cost estimate. It takes time on our part to evaluate and select the preferred offerer, then time for the selected firm to free up the people to do the work and then write up the report. Now we're down to business. Now we get to process the answers, seek clarifications, and see how satisfied we are that we can make an informed decision, and then confirm this with GIFA and the Appalachian Regional Council. I'm not sure we fully understand how much time we actually have before the $5 million disappears. If the decision is a go, We need time to do the final engineering and then construction documents, and then contract for construction. We may need to buy land for the proposed site. Well, of course, the engineers can help us with the contracting documents and the construction management. So let me, off the top of my head, suggest some of the questions that we would want to address in our scope of work. Number one, could the E. coli readings likely have been caused by wildlife or farm animals in our watershed? That was left open in last summer's report. Two, are there other realistic alternatives to a sewer system and a package plant? Please describe them. Three, are 50-year-old septic systems prone to failure? Can our septic systems be replaced, repaired forever? How many septic systems are we talking about? For example, the timeshares has 11 different associations, presumably each set of buildings with their own system. How many condo associations are there? Can the condition of the septic systems be evaluated? Number four, can preliminary engineering plans, which we have as a result of last summer's study, be given an engineering economy review? Now, what that means is, can the engineers look at the system that's been proposed and find ways to do it less expensively or more directly? For example, under the current proposal, we have sewers on both sides of certain roads. We're pumping the sewage uphill to a treatment plant and then putting it in a force main to get it down to the point below the falls where we have a discharge permit. There are good reasons that I understand we changed the location of the plant. That could be something that we would review. We could cut the amount of pipe in half. We could reduce the number of pumps and lift stations, things of that nature. Number five, what are the annual operating expenses for the system, including depreciation reserves, that we will need to be distributed to the users of the system? And what would be the cost to each association? Number six, in a seasonal second home community, how do you define infrastructure capacity for peak demand? Should we add capacity for future growth? Are package plants expandable? Number seven, conclusions. Is a sewer system needed in Sky Valley today or in the near future? That's a question. Is $5 million enough? Should we accept the grants and build the sewer or postpone action until we find a better solution? So as we get it, thank you. And I hope
We'll have plenty of
begin
time for
jotting
interaction.
these
Yes.
questions down so that the mayor and our able city manager can develop this into a scope of work that we can get out there in short order. Thank you.
Thank you. And my comments. And I want to address something directly. Asking questions at this stage is not obstruction, it's governance. 3 council members and I were elected on the basis of questions about the sewer and questions about the high density development. I proposed high density development, and I want to repeat something that I said at the first section. This discussion is not a criticism of EMI because the firm performed the job that it was contracted to do under the scope provided. It is not a criticism of our city manager. He executed the direction given and he worked diligently to secure the 2 million grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission. As an update, I was informed last week that that grant has been approved. I have not signed yet, and I was in contact with the Appalachian Regional Commission folks. I'm sorry, with the Georgia Mountain Regional Commission folks, and Maggie is on Zoom from Georgia Mountain Regional and is happy to answer questions from the city council. But I have not affixed my signature to the grant because I'm waiting for the answers to my questions, and you'll hear more about that. Because securing funding doesn't eliminate our obligation to examine the total cost and the total impact. And I told you that the immediate past director of the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, GEFA, expressed serious doubts to me that 5 million would cover the installation of a sewer system in our mountainous terrain. And that wasn't a political opinion. That was a financial warning that requires serious consideration. If the grant doesn't cover the full cost, then this council must understand what does. Will it be debt, assessments, rate increases, long-term operational liabilities? It would be fiscally irresponsible not to answer those questions before we move forward. If we need the documentation to clearly demonstrate that need, what verified failures exist, how widespread are they, what corrective actions have already been taken, how have modernized septic technologies or target solutions been evaluated, and we want to ensure that we're working from verified information. So we invited the representatives from the condominiums, the timeshares, and the country club at the last work session to outline their specific challenges and the steps that have been taken to address them. The country club responded. Since the last work session, the city manager has received a letter from the Valley View Condominium Association, and I'm going to ask him to read that out to you. We have a copy right here for you, Jason. That is it. So you heard from outside expertise, you heard from an environmental scientist with wastewater treatment experience, and you heard from Dylan Parker, who conducts much of the septic system maintenance in Sky Valley. We're not trying to delay this. We're conducting due diligence. We know that a sewer system will change the financial structure, the development capacity, and the character of this city for generations, and that decision cannot be driven by urgency, by momentum, or by partial information. It must be driven by verified need and full financial transparency. And until those elements are clearly established, this council, I hope, will proceed deliberately and responsibly. And as I have said before, I'm willing to schedule as many work sessions as this council needs until it is ready to decide on the next step. Thank you. Jason, would you like to read the letter from the Valley View Condo Association, and then we will ask for public comment?
It is 2 pages long. I will try to read as quickly as. February 26, 2026, Mayor and members of the Sky Valley Council. First, we appreciate the opportunity to attend the workshops regarding the proposed septic system at Sky Valley. As board members of the Valley View Condominium Association, we are writing to express concerns regarding the upcoming decision of the council on whether or not to move forward with the construction of a new sewer system. We previously sent an email to the city manager expressing our support of the city moving forward with the project in theory. We still need information on the cost to Valley View and our residents, including hookup costs and expected monthly charges for users of the system. We feel that a sewer system may be needed for both our condo association and the overall environmental health of the city. This is a project that should not financially affect all the property owners of the city, but only those property owners whose sewer services where sewer services will be provided. We ask, therefore, that you weigh in your decision the opinions of those that are directly impacted and solicit their opinions. We are aware that this was an issue in the last election, and the council may feel that they have a mandate from the public to not move forward on this project. We want to mention that there are approximately 1,000 residential units with probably 2,000 owners in Sky Valley, not counting the timeshare units. All of these properties pay taxes, and in fact, those property owners that are not able to vote pay a higher rate since they do not get homestead exemption. So while the difference in the election outcome was a matter of a couple of dozen votes, this represents a very small fraction of the affected property owners. Valley View alone has approximately 100 owners, very few of which were able to express their opinion in the last election. We think it is important that those directly affected by this decision be given the highest weighting, and while most of us were unable to vote, we would hope that the council would represent the interests of all property owners, not just the voters. Sewer service is not a new concept. In Googling cities in Georgia without sewer service, we were only able to find less than a handful. Sky Valley we are the exception, not the rule. And when it comes to protecting the environment, we are on the wrong side of the equation. The state of Georgia and the federal government would not be providing financial assistance of over $5 million to us, and many times that across the state if they did not believe it was a good public policy to provide sanitary sewers. There is clear and convincing evidence that sanitary sewers improve the environment and overall water quality. We are also aware that in the past, raw sewage was seeping across the Sky Valley Golf Course and probably making its way into the lakes and streams. It is important to point out that at the time our units were built, they complied with all the development codes then in existence. Times change, and today these units may not have been permitted with the level of density. This was likely a failure of the vision of the government at that time, and what we need now is a vision for the future. We need to adjust our thinking to our current situation, as we are not the only property owners with sanitary sewer issues that will be addressed by this project. We think it is important to point out that the cost will be borne by those with service and should have little or no financial impact upon those where services is unavailable. We are also aware that many people have voted against this to stop new development. There should be multiple ways for the city to control development other than to elect not to provide sanitary sewers. We thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, board members, Valley View Condo Association.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anybody who wishes to make a public comment at this time? If you would come on up to the microphone and identify yourself.
I'm Peggy Durham, resident of Sky Valley for 26 years. I've been here to urge us to make a critical decision for Sky Valley's future and build the sewer system we can while we have $5 million to do so. Septic systems last about 40 to 50 years. Ours are that old and continuing to age, and tree roots are only growing deeper into them. Leaking tanks and faulty drain fields contaminate groundwater and lakes and streams. A recent article I read in the Atlanta Business Chronicle asserts that property values fall where septic failures become common. When I first started playing croquet here in 2018, I was taken aback by the septic odor I could detect on the croquet lawns. It smelled like a very strong disinfectant trying to mask something. The late Ed Morley, who many of you knew, a respected city council member and himself a Valley View resident, had told me in a casual conversation that after a busy weekend with lots of company at Valley View, the grassy area behind his building was wet with overflowing drain fields. Several golfers, including my husband, have mentioned sewage overflow on the 17th cart path. I haven't played croquet for a long time. I got too bad at it. But at this past fall, I recognized an awful odor in another area of the valley. This time it didn't smell like disinfectant, it was worse. I was in the front parking lot of the Sky Valley Chapel, and I smelled something I was familiar with from a Florida neighborhood that had had septic issues. Sewer systems are an important part of city infrastructure, and I never believed that Sky Valley could afford one. I think it's remarkable that we found a way with a state-of-the-art package sewer system to address at least our valley area and take care of the odors and pollution there. I don't think it will ever be achievable to climb our mountains with sewer services, but let's take care of our flatland area when we have $5 million to do it and safeguard the environment of this beautiful valley. That's in the public interest, which government should protect. I know there are concerns about development. My understanding is that the sewer system capacity for $5 million is quite limited. After we take care of our critical needs, the multifamily units with failing septic systems, how much capacity would there realistically be for new construction? Enough to motivate the owners of that ugly clubhouse to tear it down and build something attractive, I hope. I cringe every time I drive by that dilapidating clubhouse in that parking lot that's the centerpiece of our city. I regret that it occupies that space in the center of our valley. How much nicer it would be to have pleasing looking homes and perhaps small serviceable shops rather than that eyesore. I think it's regrettable that Merrill Trust, owner of much of the undeveloped property in Sky Valley, has recently suffered slings and arrows from some of our residents. When we built our house in Sky Valley in 2000, the golf course was in mediocre condition, the old lodge was closed and dilapidating, and the only place to meet neighbors was a small pavilion next to what is now the croquet lawn. Harrison Merrill put millions into renovating the golf course to make it one of the premier courses in the Southeast. He started building the new clubhouse and then got caught in the 2008 recession, as did hundreds of businesses in America. He didn't abandon us, as has been recently mischaracterized. His bankruptcy proceedings resulted in residents of Sky Valley being able to purchase the clubhouse for pennies on the dollar and build it into the vital part of our community that it has become. It may be a private club, but we all know how many gatherings and events it hosts that are open to the public and bind us as a community. And I'm pleased and proud that the golf course is an enviable public course. This was a result of Harrison Merrill's initial investment in Sky Valley. So when it comes to development, which is inevitable in any city's future where there's privately owned property, I hope we can work with a developer who values Sky Valley's beauties as much as we do. With the investment Harrison Merrill Sr. made and lost here in the early 2000s, and the willingness of his son to come back, I think that is such a developer. We have responsible development. We can have responsible development that a limited sewer system and our building codes will permit. Going back to the issue of failing septic tanks, many have asked why the city should fix the problems of a private property owner. I contend that environmental problems, concerns belong to all of us. We now have the grants to build a limited sewer system to address those concerns without taxing our citizens. Why would we turn that money down? As a homeowner, I would much rather pay the hookup and monthly service fee for a sewer service rather than going through the expense and problems of a new septic system. I wish we, or most likely our son, would have that option when our 26-year-old septic system needs replacement in the next 15 to 20 years. We probably won't be around for it, but
Thank you.
high on Alex
Your time
Mountain,
is
that
up.
won't be a choice.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else? Come on up. Introduce yourself and please speak into the mic so that the Zoom folks can hear, and thank you.
My name is Jesse Durham. Got a lot of Durham comments this morning. I spoke last time. I wanted to come back. I don't understand the workshop or the work session process. So I asked, I had a couple of questions that I don't need answers right now, but I wanted to approach those. Councilman Curtis answered almost every one of my questions. So hopefully I'll be very brief, okay? I took 4 things away from the last meeting that I thought were important. The first one was, I had never heard of a package sewer system. I heard a person who works on those systems talk about problems that were with those systems. I feel that something that should occur is an exploration of those systems again, and some benchmarking to other communities to determine whether they have those types of problems. We got his advice. We ought to listen to it and see whether that's right. I don't necessarily agree with that, his assessment, but I think it was something that was raised that we should have done. And then your examination of the question of whether $5 million is enough is very appropriate for that. So I'm with that. My wife and I had this discussion the other day. I don't know the answer to this question. An old drain field. Can an old drain field have the pipes removed, refilled with dirt, have trenches dug and put new pipes in and be used again? Or do you have to have new land for a drain field? I don't know the answer to that question. And I would think that's something we ought to examine, because there is no new land available for the clubhouse or for Valley View. They're on the golf course, and as Parker told us the other day. Councilwoman Beasley's comment about microbiology tests to determine, and Jim brought that up, we need to get that scheduled. And then finally, and Jim brought this up also, was I think there ought to be a timeline that goes from here to May with objectives along that timeline that are being examined and met. And so that we're not surprised 3 weeks before the thing runs out. I think we're all in agreement of that, but I have not seen anything come out of the work, out of the city from the work sessions that are addressing those issues. And so I think you're working towards it. I appreciate your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Is there anybody else in the room? Come on up and introduce yourself.
Excuse me.
My name is Garnett Lawrence. I'm a full-time resident. We've been here about 5.5 years. At one of the election meetings, I expressed concern regarding the sewer. I don't have problems with being on a sewer. The problem I had was a disruption of life in making it, and the change that it would make regarding the potential density for the proposed developments. My next door neighbor, and who has become a friend, is a gentleman who basically has been in charge for quite a few years of the timeshares. He was up here last week, I know, working on a project regarding an issue with one of the timeshares, and they, he said basically they've got some major problems. I understand that occasionally an individual needs to sacrifice for the benefit of the good. So if sewer is what they vote, then we'll be happy to live with it. I know we can't ask questions, so I've got a comment that may sound like a question. Right? Since transparency was one of the keystones of this election time, has anyone been in contact with any of these third-party outside companies? We've talked about needs assessments, financial, economic assessments, an alphabet assessment. I don't remember the letters to it now, but for microbes, regarding how soon they can start, how long it will take, and how much it will cost. If so, I think that's information that probably should get passed along to the public. And if it has not been done, then I would think that since we have some timetables, deadlines coming up, it probably is something that should be in the very near future, effort-wise. So that's all I've got. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up.
I am Vicki Hayter, 32 Saddleback Circle. I've got a little concern being in the golf business a long time. I moved here from Little River, South Carolina. And when we put this sewage in, whether people like it or not, that golf course is going to change a little bit, especially if development comes around it. And we right now have a beautiful golf course with beautiful scenery, beautiful landscape. And if you start building around that golf course, I'm gonna tell you like what happened in Myrtle Beach or in Little River where we were. There was 109 golf courses. There's now 60. We used to charge $198 for a green fee, and we now couldn't do that because building went around it. And I work for Sky Valley because this golf course is where the income comes in. I think that y'all appreciate everything you do, because I think I worry that we gotta slow down. I know you got a deadline, but we need to think about all that. And, I just hope you take that in consideration too, because I've seen it happen. And it worries me for Sky Valley. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to come on up?
Advertising my grandson's school. Dale Greenfelder. We've owned a condominium here since 1982. And I firmly believe it's the responsibility of associations to maintain their septic systems. And in the last several months, I was abashed by what I heard about septic systems for 20 years haven't been maintained. In our association, every 3 to 5 years, we have someone come and explore what's going on, and it's our responsibility. And I still have not heard, I've heard in casual conversation about Valley View, whether or not they've explored other avenues to help with their situation. And I was hoping that's what I was gonna hear in that letter, that, oh, by the way, this is what we've done, and we've exhausted all the possibilities. I think it's the responsibility of the timeshares and Valley View. We've heard from the golf club that we don't have any problems there, even though it was touted that the club was also in trouble. I think it's their responsibility to do the needs assessment, not the responsibility of the taxpayers to prove private and associations, for them to prove the need to us that, look, we've exhausted all this. This is March. This is such a massive project and will have such an impact on our community. I just don't see how it's possible for these individuals to make this kind of decision. We have old data. It's just not, this has been happening now. We've had $5 million since 21. They didn't figure it out in all those years. How are we gonna press these people to make that kind of decision? There's all kinds of grant money out there. We've got a guy that is very skilled in grant writing and finding money. I feel that we need to table this, get the data. I don't know if you stayed up all night starting today till May, that you will ever come to a decision that is proper for the community. And I just hope that you'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else in the room who would like to make a public comment? There being no one in the room, we will move to the Zoom.
Carla, did you have a question? No, I just have a comment. I think one of the things that was glossed over in Dylan Parker's presentation, and if you go back to the recording, you will be able to see what he said, which is when septic systems fail, you have a campsite. And questioning, I understand all the questions. I support a new needs assessment. I don't really care who pays for it. I think the city should, frankly, because that's the job of government, is to protect all the citizens, not just some, not their views, not their taxes, etc. It is the job of the city to protect all citizens, whether they vote or not, all taxpayers. And I think it is in the best interest of the city to, and it's all of its taxpayers, to make sure that we don't have properties which fail and go off the tax rolls, thereby requiring a giant increase in the remaining properties taxes and or severe reduction in services, or becoming so financially hobbled that we would need to consider joining Dillard or Raven County at large and losing our status as a city. I am also a data person. I have had, my family and my husband's family have had septic systems in the past, and we know that they fail. And to answer Mr. Durham's question, it is my understanding that no, you cannot dig up the same site, replace the piping, and install a new drainage system on the same site. The ground, after some work that I have had in traffic engineering and construction engineering, which included exposure to environmental engineering as a result of those projects, you have to have new ground because the percolation rate and the ground that was previously used needs time to recover naturally from that abuse. I could be wrong, but it is my belief, and having had done this personally on a property that we owned in Tampa, Florida, we could not install our septic drain field in the same spot. We had to clear landscaping and put it into a completely different area of the property, which thankfully we had, or we would not have been able to sell our home at market rate, but only at a completely deep discount because it wouldn't have been inhabitable for long. It had been in place for 30 years and tree roots really had nothing to do with it. It's a saturation situation. So my feeling is the city should get on with it, get the needs assessment, let's go. $5 million is better than nothing. And it is my fear, and it should be the current council's fear, that you will go down in history as the people who passed up the money when it was available. And in 5 or 10 years, when it's a dire situation, we will have to fund that completely out of city coffers. That's my comment, and I speak for my husband as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom who would like to make a comment? Somebody has, Mr. Travis?
Yes, my name's Dave Travis, and my wife and I have had a home on Alex Mountain for 22 years. When we built that home, we were in our 40s, and we viewed it as a generational thing we would leave our children, and they enjoy Sky Valley as well. And we look forward to the day when we can live there full time. The mayor said it fairly well early. There are larger questions at play: the character of Sky Valley, the mix of multi-housing, single family, of business. Sky Valley has a problem that many municipalities have, and that's that revenues remain stable, but costs rise incrementally every year. And that's every aging municipality has this issue. I think we're confusing by labeling this issue just sewer. I know sewer is the issue of the day, but I think it's this larger picture. I think this is less about the sewer situation, but sewer may be the best way to enable development. I know that raises costs. I know that raises revenues, but costs remain stable. So I think the responsibility of the council is to think holistically and long-term and generationally, not just what affects my house value now, but what does it affect the values of our community moving forward? So I know we're not answering questions, but I think a key question that you have to ask in the whole process is, how does the council plan to raise the tax revenues enough over the next generation or 10 years, 20 years without new concentrated development in the Central Valley? I doubt that adding 10 new houses, I heard someone say at the last council meeting, hey, we're adding houses. Well, we're adding them in ones and twosies and fivesies. What does the model say if you add 10? How much tax revenue are you really raising with that improvement? Any development that would have median sales price higher than the median sales price of now seems to me would raise the tax base and enable healthy community moving forward. So I would just commend the council to think holistically, long term. It's not just about the sewer, it's about the whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? We have Maggie with Georgia Mountain Regional Commission.
Hi, yes, ma'am. Hi, Miss Mayor. Hi, Council, and hi, everyone. So my name is Maggie Smith. I work for the Georgia Mountains Regional Commission, and I helped Mr. Jason Streetman write the grant for the ARC funds. I just want to make a couple of points clear to the council. One thing is that this opportunity will probably never happen again. It is very rare that ARC gives grants over $1 million. $2 million is unheard of, and GFA also does not give grants. They typically only give loans. So this $5 million opportunity probably will not happen again. So I just want y'all to make sure that you consider that. I do want to say that I know y'all are considering a needs assessment. The only issue is that the project has to go forward exactly as is described in the grants. So if there are changes that must be made, those have to go through a specific process, and ARC and GFA can deny those. So if there is something about these grant awards that changes y'all would like to change once you have a needs assessment done, that may be a difficult process. And I do want to make clear that while there are no official consequences to not accepting these grants, it's not a great look for the community, and it will make it more difficult to get grants from ARC and GFA in the future. So there technically is nothing. Y'all won't be barred from receiving grants, but it will make it much more difficult in the future. But yeah, thank y'all for letting me talk to y'all. I'm here if you have any questions about the grants. Whatever y'all need, just let me know.
Thank you, Maggie. If you would hold on as we continue, I suspect the city council may have some questions for you, so please don't go away.
Yes, ma'am,
Thank
absolutely.
Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to make a public comment?
No one else has
Nobody. All right.
Madam Mayor, I have a question for Megan. If
Maggie?
Maggie,
Yes, sir.
excuse me. Sorry, man. We have another Megan here. Sometime in the last year and a half, we changed the proposed location for the package plant from a site down below the falls, the big waterfall. And we're looking at another site considerably upstream. In other words, and part of the reason that I understood for this change, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, was that there were concerns, and I voiced some concerns, in fact, about having the plant potentially visible from down near the falls. And so I think at that time, the reaction was, well, let's move it a little further, a little deeper into the woods. That satisfied me. Subsequently, I think the Merrill Corporation raised the same concern. And I understood that the ARC did not want to be involved in something that was going to be controversial, and that was the real clincher in moving the plant location up higher in the valley. Now, there's some concern about what $5 million will cover. And it seems to me that if you're pumping the sewage upstream and treating it, and then having to pump it back downhill now, that takes twice as much piping. It's more expensive to install, and so on and so forth. And that if we were to move the plant from the upstream location back down to a hidden spot in the woods below the falls, very close to where we have the permit to send the effluent out, that we could do a lot more of a system in terms of, removing septic fields from the people that were affected, reduce future maintenance because we'd cut the number of pumps and lift stations. Is that sort of an engineering economy study something that you would appreciate or would be willing to consider if we could get to the point where we know we can install the system?
So I think that this is something that the city would need to discuss with EMI. I'm sorry, I think this is something the city should discuss with EMI. They should know more about the process of actually asking ARC to reconsider the location. I will say, Jason and I walked the Mud Creek Falls area with Annika with ARC, and she was very against ARC being involved in building a treatment plant in that area just because it is such a big tourist location. So she seemed very concerned. That's why we really were considering the Merrill property further in. It would be something that EMI would need to justify to ARC if that's something y'all wanted to change in the scope of work.
Okay, but yes, and I think everyone in the room here shares that concern. We don't want to mess up our prime natural area.
Yes, sir.
And Councillor Beasley has a question.
The capacity of the proposed sewer has been changed at least 3 times that I have documented. Does that impact, is that considered a change that you're talking about when you say that you can't scope? So what scope of what capacity has that grant been approved for?
That is a great question. I will go through the documents and see if I can describe the exact capacity. I believe we had it as so sorry.
No, Mayor, I think it was 40,000 gallons a day is what it was reduced down to on the last call.
I think we had it as 50,000 on the grant application. So that should be in the award, but it depends on what is specifically described in the award as well. But from what I understood, when we applied, ARC does not do any housing projects. They don't want any involvement in housing. So while they said that it was fine if existing homes tied in, this capacity is not such that can support further homes. At least that's how we understood it in the grant. That's what we wrote. So I could be completely misunderstanding. I don't have any expertise in gallons per day and in capacity, but that's just kind of how we presented it to ARC.
So my question still is, if the capacity were different than that 50,000, does that change the conditions of the grant and therefore invalidate it?
So it won't invalidate the grant. It will require a scope change. And I guess technically that is something the ARC can deny. So if you do want to change the 50,000 gallons per day that's described in the grant or in the award, it would require a scope change, which if they do deny is potentially a reason of having to give the money back to ARC.
Can I, Madam Mayor, may I ask Jason a question about the GFA capacity grant?
Certainly.
So the original grant, so the original proposed sanitary sewer was 100,000. Is the GFA grant have the same restrictions that we got it granted on the 100,000? Do you know?
There was no capacity requirements for the GFA. It was more of just identifying the needs. The capacity really got tied more to the costs associated. When originally we were looking, and Maggie can chime in, but originally when we were looking at doing the ARC, it was around 100,000, and it has been moving. It's been 100, it's been 70. But originally the original proposal of $6 million, when we presented that for this grant, ARC came back and said, okay, that's fine. You've got $3 million GFA, $2 million ARC. Where's the other $1 million coming from? And so we went back to EMI and we said, we need to scale this down to make it $5 million. So that was why it was reduced down. That was an ARC conditional item more so than GFA. GFA, however you want to say it, they did not have any requirements as far as capacity. They were just more concerned on how it's going to be used.
Okay, so may I please clarify? So my understanding from this is that the GFA grant has no restrictions on the capacity per day, but the ARC has 50,000 capacity on it. And the GFA was from originally a federal program from septic to sewer, and my understanding is that program isn't even in existence anymore.
And that program is going.
And that this one is for strictly retail, commercial development. Is that true, Maggie?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm sorry, please.
No, you go ahead. I'm so sorry.
So my concern then, so the original recommendation from what I can glean from the 2017 studies and after that was, and to Valley View's point of future thinking, we originally went after this as 100,000 to secure the problems that we had, anything potentially in the future. Scaling it back to fit into the money doesn't feel like we're addressing the need, that we're just trying to fit it into the money budget and not fit it into the need of the entire valley, if in fact that is what's designed. So I'm confused, and this is where it gets muddy waters with, we were told we needed $100,000, and then we're like, we don't have the money for that, so let's scale it back. And I've even heard as low as 25 to 35,000 gallons. That are we shorting ourselves and our future if we are trying to fit it into this? The other comment I would like to add is I just came from 3 days of 250 other city council people. And the example that they used in speaking to the new councils and the new mayors was any bad example that they wanted to give about anything was attached to a sewer. Over budget, over cost, over operating costs. And there was a city that is about the same size as Sky Valley that has been wrestling with this for 30 years. All of the residents are on it. They had an 85% grant done. They're $8 million over budget. They are over a year overdue. And the operating expenses were 3.5 times what they were originally quoted. My last comment to that too, one of the reassuring things that we did learn when we were in our conference with representatives from GFA and LMEG, that there is lots of grant money out there. That's what they do. That's what they're for. And all of these cities that do maintain sewers, and a lot of them choose, like Clayton, to pass the sewer to the county because it's too expensive for a small city to run, that there is lots of money available for just this. And we are not unique to the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beasley. Maggie, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. So the one thing that we did, I believe, I don't know if it's specifically included in the grant application or if it's just something that Jason and I talked about, but I know we were planning that in the future, if there is a need to increase the gallons per day, that is something that can be added to the treatment plant. So while this may meet like existing needs, it's not really meant to accommodate future needs in case the city does want to include development. And in that case, the city would need to expand the treatment plant, or add more capacity. So that was it. It was scaled down quite a bit, but it should meet existing needs for houses and the two businesses, I believe, that were wanting to build. One was with Merrill, and I can't remember the other, but it was just for those. So if more developments was wanted in the future, it would need more capacity.
Madam Mayor, if I could add, I think some of this talk about the capacity kind of goes back to mindset. Working with the previous administration, and from day one, since I've been involved with these grants, my biggest concern in being an advocate is to make sure, as Maggie says, that you follow the letter of the grant so you're not in a situation where you get to pay things back. And the GFA grant is very specific in that even though there was no capacity requirements, the intent of that grant was conversion of the existing valley properties. Where Maggie is correct on the ARC, that grant is geared towards commercial retail type development. And I've said this since day one, neither one of these grants puts any priority on future residential development. And so when we were talking with Mr. Hood with EMI about, number one, trying to stay within the $5 million, because the previous administration, they were very adamant that they did not want to take on debt. They wanted to build this within the confines of that money. And so scaling it down the thought was, okay, what is the absolute smallest plant that could be built that all of the existing timeshares, condos, the houses that were in the path of the sewer from that 17 study, what is the smallest plant we could build that could accommodate that? And then also allow a little bit of extra capacity for commercial development. That was the requirement of the ARC. And so that's why it's been scaled down. As an old school land use planner, I've always felt that development should pay for itself. And as Maggie said, the plant would be designed if somebody were to come in and develop and say, okay, hey, we want the tie-in. Well, guess what? Bring the checkbook and get ready to build. You're going to spend the money to expand the plant. But again, that's kind of the thought process. I know Councilor Allred and Councilor Curtis was on that administration. Please, if I've spoken out of turn, please correct me. But that was kind of the mindset, I think, of bringing it down, was trying to stay within the cost to accommodate the requirements of the grant. And then again, just to meet the demand or the intent of the grants themselves. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And part of that point was to make it possible so that people didn't have to pay a hookup fee and people didn't have to pay to have their old system removed. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
I understood that the GFA grant program that we had was an initiative of Governor Kemp. And that this is phasing out at the end of FY '26, which is coming up in 4 months. And that it's not likely to be renewed. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, sir. As far as I am aware, they will not be giving out any similar grants in the future. They very, very rarely open any grant opportunities.
Okay.
Typically it's only loans.
All the more reason for us to look this very carefully.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
As we are. Thank you, Counselor. Jason, you had mentioned that you invited some folks to join us. Could you give us an update on who is present and who is not?
Well, I was looking online, I see that Rep from the club is here. I think I see Ms. Thompson with Bellevue.
Kim Bailey.
Kim Bailey with Timeshares. We had reached out to, I did reach out to representatives from the health department. I don't know if they're online. I don't recognize them. Of course, Mr. Hood, I don't know if he's here or not with EMI. He told me that he'd try to join if he could. Of course, Ms. Smith, Maggie with GMRC. So it looks like a good bit of the people here. I don't see everybody here, but I do see several that were invited over here.
I don't see Jerry Hood's name there, is he? I did not see him.
Mr. Hood, if you're here, could you identify yourself? He said he may have one of his associates, but I don't recognize. So he may not unfortunately be able to call, but he did, when I spoke to him last week, he did say that he would make every effort, but apparently
And I understand that Mr. Mateo was planning on having a.
He told me that if he could not make it, his partner Alfonso Diaz would be here. I don't, Ronnie and I spoke last week. He called me and cause I left him a message, yes, and he said he would try to be here, but apparently he is. And I don't see Mr. Diaz here, so I don't see him here, but he said, I think he did say that he would try to watch it after, but anyway, they were invited, and obviously.
Well, as I said, it is important for the city council to hear from everyone, all the stakeholders involved in this process, from the developers to the septic to sewer folks, and it's unfortunate that we are not able to ask questions of them. Does anybody on the city council have anything to add?
Yes. This week, I found a letter from the timeshares dated September 24th, 2025. So last fall. It was to the mayor and the city manager, and their directors had met today, discussed the sewage system. By the way, I've also learned from the timeshares that their board is meeting in early March to discuss just this thing. I was interested in this because, it's tough for people to share their dirty laundry. We don't really do that publicly. It might be different if we had a consultant who was just trying to figure out what happened and what was done and what the condition and the remaining lifespan of a system's going to be. So that's different. But I'd like to read the relevant parts. The existing septic systems now serving these buildings and associations are 50 plus years old and nearing the end of their lifetime. We are already experiencing expensive repairs and have concerns as to the future of these systems. In addition, should our drain fields have reached the end of their projected life, we are limited in land ownership that might serve to build new drain fields. We do have several unanswered questions that are of concern. And basically these have to do with the the tie-in expenses, what's going to be the usage fees, the projected amount of, monthly, who pays for the lift station to get the from below the buildings up to the road where the sewer would be, the timeline of construction, and who will pay for the abandonment of the existing septic systems. I think some of these questions we don't know the answer to now. I think the last administration had made some comments on these. But the Board of Timeshares of Sky Valley, Inc. recognizes the need for a sewage system that will meet proposed future growth and needs, as well as solve the existing environmental needs of our timeshares and the entire community. However, we do have concerns regarding expenses and the unanswered questions. So we look forward to receiving more information. And I think they may have another letter coming. But,
Have you heard about it? I'm sorry, Jason, have you heard about another letter coming from the timeshares?
Well, Kim's
I
online.
would say Mr. Beatty's online.
Mr. Beatty is online.
He's talking.
Mr. Beatty, please unmute yourself.
Yes, in fact, that letter was sent back, Jim. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I was kind of biding my time here and listening. Those are valid concerns that we have, and we had questions regarding those. As you know, as we build budgets for our owners and base fees and these type things, we need to know that. Yet we are out of land, as was stated by the club owners, the gentleman representing the club too, I think. We're out of property, and we do know or have been told that you can't use the same drain field over again. They are 50 some odd years old. We are beginning to experience some issues with the existing septic systems that we have. As we promote timeshares, and of course, I think you'll find that a lot of the timeshares are here from the very beginning of Sky Valley. And there are a lot of people that have probably built a house on Ridgepole as a result of owning a timeshare at some point in time, being a integral part of the Sky Valley neighborhood now as principal homeowners as well as secondary homes as a result of having spent time in the timeshares. In a lot of cases, we are the first touch that some people have with Sky Valley. I know there are various opinions on growth and development. However, we are working pretty hard in all our associations to upgrade them and give a better presentation. You can actually look at Wingfoot and see what we've done on decks and stuff there. But we are anticipating some future growth in our associations, and to be able to sell that growth and to promote that these associations, we need to be able to have a sound sewer system or a sound system for discharge, and we're out of land, and so this would be beneficial. We are not expecting the owners that are not affected by a sewer system to pay our debts. Let me make that perfectly clear. We know that there are items that we are responsible for. Thus, our questions about all of the expenses and the tie-in expenses and exactly how they work. No one has been able to give me answers to that yet. Therefore, we're kind of waiting on that. We do have a board meeting set for the 7th of April, when we will all be discussing this, among other subjects. And I think at that time, we will be submitting another letter to the city based on our opinions, our findings, and more particularly our needs. Thank you very much for the invitation, Jason, and I'm always reachable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. I have one question for Maggie. if you don't mind, Maggie, because this is the question that I called you about, and I said I have the grant, the grant application has been approved. If I sign this grant, what commitment am I making and what consequences are there? So if you would tell the work session what that is, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, yes, I was just about to email you in case you just wanted it to use so you could send it out. But basically, I did check to see if there is a time frame for the mayor to sign. If there's like a deadline. I haven't been able to get a hold of ARC in the past couple days. So I'm not positive if there is a specific timeline, but my coworkers who have been working here for several years have recommended not waiting more than about 2 weeks. ARC will probably prompt you if they haven't heard back. Then if you do decide to sign the grant, the best thing to do is if you are not 100% sure if you would like the grant, is to not spend any money. If you spend any money, all of that money will need to be returned. And that is a much worse look on the city for future grants. Sorry. My bad. So it is a much worse look if you do spend the money and then have to return it than just not spending it and returning the grant. There is a process of de-obligation if you formally sign. So that is, as far as I understand, it is a little bit difficult, but there are no formal consequences either way. But it is recommended that you go ahead and try to figure out before you sign the grant, just because that will have the least repercussions. If you decide not to accept it, it's not the best look, but it definitely looks better than accepting the money and then giving it back.
Thank you so much.
Of
Are there
course.
any questions from the city council? Any closing comments?
What, Mayor?
Yes.
What is your understanding of what Maggie just told us?
Maggie told me to think hard about it before I sign.
Okay.
Just one comment. If I could. And I hesitate to bring this up, but I think it needs to be said. You guys are elected. You got elected by the voters and residents of Sky Valley. And in my estimation, you got elected primarily because of your progress to shut this down. People were opposed to it for two reasons. One, some people didn't want us to spend money for certain people and not everybody. They felt that private businesses should pay their own expenses and all of that. Maybe they should pay for the roads in front of their business too. I don't know. And the other part of the group didn't want any growth. Now that we're here, close the bridge. We don't want any more development. And I will continue to remind them that it changed when you guys came. So it'll change again, and there's nothing we can do about it. Best thing we can do is look at the future. But I think we've gotten ourselves between a rock and a hard place here. The previous council looked at all these issues, made a different decision than you guys have made. And at this point, I don't see how y'all can back up on it. I think you're elected based on the fact that we're not going to do this. So we probably just ought to get on and not do it.
Thank you, Councillor.
I would respectfully disagree with my esteemed colleague with whom I very seldom disagree. Things have changed since the election. We have been awarded the ARC grant. In other words, for the first time in the history of Sky Valley, we've actually got a proposed solution to our environmental problem waiting for it. Now, I've heard there's the doctrine of changed circumstances as we learn more, like, hey, we actually got the money now. As we complete the needs assessment, which was also sort of a campaign development, I think we will answer some of these questions if we're able to formulate what the questions are that we want answered. Which is why I provided you the statement that I did. So, yeah, I would think that we want to see the needs assessment through and, really make an informed decision. Because there'll be recriminations and we don't want to endure.
One thing, Jim,
Yeah.
I don't mean to dominate this, but thank you, Jim, for your comment. And I agree with you on all that. But the problem is we cannot have a needs assessment for future needs. We don't know, we cannot look into the future and come up with data that will tell us what we need in 5 years. But common sense tells us what we're gonna need.
Yeah.
And common sense also tells us that our job here is not just to react to what happens, but to look forward to see what we can prevent from happening. So these are questions that this council has to answer. I think you guys are elected because of what you said. And, if that's the case, let's just get on with it. Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Elrod. I value your opinion very much, and thank you for speaking. And as always, Jim, you as well. I am a woman of action, and I agree with you, Councilor Elrod. We've already spent $80,000 toward this sewer that has put our water fund in crisis. Or maybe that's too dramatic, behind. It's been behind for a while. I said before, and I still believe, we need to get our financial house in order. The water has to be addressed. The water affects every single person in Sky Valley, every home, every taxpayer, every property. The sewer, as mentioned a couple of times, would end up being a special district, which we haven't even used that word. But to Mr. Beatty's point and other people, it would only, and Valley Views, it would affect the people that it's impacted. That's a special district. And the reality of it, and it's my belief, and this is only my opinion, that it would bankrupt us if we move forward at this point with what we have. I know more than ever, as after my instincts were telling me that, after spending 3 days with other people who are doing it, the sewer is an albatross. Now, we absolutely need to address our environmental factors, and I believe we can do that with some testing that is not another $15,000, $10,000, $20,000 assessment, to Councilor Arved's point, that would be expired by the time we move forward. I believe that this more data in the micro source testing that we talked about is not expensive, relatively speaking. It could be done quarterly for the next year or so while we get our water taken care of. And then we get a plan with a capital improvement. Regardless of the grants that we get or not grant, we're going to have a huge financial expense for the city. We need to start saving for that. We need to start planning for that. We need to start looking into all the costs that go with that. What would be the special district if there was one? What's the reality of our terrain? It's way more involved than let's just move forward because we got $5 million. This May deadline, that was a surprise to me. I've heard Beth mention it, or Ms. Councilor Pence several times mention it. I don't know where that May deadline is. I don't know if there's an email or a note somewhere about that. I'm familiar with that deadline.
It's more of we know that the state runs a July 1, June 30th budget. Anticipating that as that June 30th timeline draws near, we're probably going to get some type of notification from GFA saying, hey.
So we're assuming we're at the deadline. But it's
an assumption based on that. And just having some conversations with GFA, not so much recently, but I'd say within the past few months, year or so, that knowing that, and Mr. Hood, knowing that 26 is kind of if you don't make good faith efforts start, you're pretty much lost it. That's kind of just a generalized timeline.
Thank you. I'm in favor of making a decision on the grants ASAP. I'm in favor of returning those grants because I feel like we took them when we weren't ready for them, and that is not being a good steward. That means we took them from another city that could have used them and they were shovel ready. I think we get our house in order. I think we plan for it. We make sure we have all the answers to the questions to all the stakeholders, make sure that we know exactly what we're doing. We have all of the answers, and then we move forward. I'm not doubting that there may be one needed in the future, but I feel like acting right now with what we have, the small amount of money we have, and the already $1 million debt and the already negative cash flow, that we will be digging ourselves a bigger hole. I also don't want to downscale the package plant to fit into a price tag if in fact we really need more than that, and that we are not really addressing the critical need if and when it can be produced. But I think a lot of the testing has to be done to establish that. So that is my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councillor
I
Griffin.
think
Judge, we're running up against the clock right now. So if I could ask Councillor Jesse Price, do you have any comments?
Yeah, during the election, it was a lot about the sewer, and the sewer is a bit of a gateway to, it does double and triple development capacity in certain areas. And to Councilwoman Beasley's points, we did learn a lot at the event we were at last week. There are cities in Georgia going through the very same thing. And one city in particular, their cost just to run the plant of a city similar to our size, $350,000 a year. That's a large cost. So there are future things. I'm on the younger side. I want my kids to enjoy Sky Valley. It does worry me to burden ourselves when we only have $5 million and it costs them $20 million to build their plants, and it costs them so much. So I am in favor of moving forward with the decision.
Thank you. This is a work session, so we do not take any action during this work session. So this will be, Jason, the next step for the city regarding a needs assessment. You've been looking at potential candidates for this?
Well, I have talked to some, we would want to put that out in the Georgia Procurement Registry. But no, this uniqueness of Sky Valley, doing due diligence, we have reached out to some engineering firms just to say, hey, be on the lookout for that, because we find if we don't do that, we don't really get responses. But as Councilmember Curtis said, once we get the scope finalized, I think we can do that very quickly. We can get that out pretty quickly. We can get our RFP, RFQ out there, put it in the newspaper, do all the things we're required to do, and we can move that along very, very quickly. I'm thinking that probably, certainly we get together, get the scope together, we can get that out almost instantaneous, within a couple of days, I would say.
Thank you. All right, then being no further business in this work session, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Oh, sorry, Todd. Do you want a second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.